Up until very recently, people were forced to choose what they wanted in an e-reader. You want a large screen e-reader, a note-taking e-reader, or an e-reader that you can actually get a broad selection of ebooks on. Now, we finally have one device that tries to bring us all of those features. This is the Inktelligent review of the Kobo Elipsa. I haven't usually done unboxings, but the presentation of the Kobo Elipsa pack, as it's referred to, kind of just asks for it. I personally feel Kobo really did a great job on the presentation of this device on the whole, even if they did pack the contents of my device's box upside down. The packaging feels sturdy and very solid, and I'm a fan of the colorful accents. All these things help to sell the idea that the Elipsa is not just another e-reader, but something special and premium. However, those watching this segment with more of an ecological viewpoint may question, and perhaps rightly so, whether a more minimalist packaging solution couldn't have been thought up to reduce the materials required. Anyway, in the box you get the Elipsa itself, as well as their signature threaded charging cable. The Kobo stylus and battery, yes, it is there if you look for it, as well as a case made of depleted uranium. No, just kidding. It's actually just plastic with a few magnets, but I think it is overly heavy and thick. The Kobo Elipsa features a 10.3-inch e-ink screen, a weight of 383 grams, and it also comes with a non-expandable internal memory of 32 gigabytes. The 10.3-inch e-ink screen means that the device is near the same size as something like the Remarkable 2, but smaller than the 13.3-inch second-generation Sony digital paper. Aesthetically speaking, the Kobo Elipsa is pleasingly designed. Its curved edges, screen flush with the smooth side bezels, and the slightly tapered thickness of the Elipsa make it a nice device to hold. The stylus is okay, but doesn't feel overly innovative to me. The home screen is probably familiar to anyone who's used a Kobo e-reader before, and displays your recently read books, quick links to some of your recently used collections or basically folders, and Frontlight, Wi-Fi, and syncing controls. The bottom of the device contains quick tabs that let you navigate back to the home screen, browse your own on-device book selection, access or make new notebooks, shop for new ebooks on Kobo's own online bookstore from the device, and a More tab to access the device's user manual, the device's Dropbox functionality, beta features, and more. Being a company that has historically focused on building e-readers to actually read ebooks on, Kobo has optimized the device for this experience, and it is very good. Just connect the device to the internet and hit the Discover tab to go to Kobo's ebook store. There you can search for a title or choose from those recommended on the main store home screen. Once you've found a book you like to purchase, tap on the Buy button. What I really appreciate in this next step is that Kobo stops to ask you to confirm which credit card you'd like to use and gives you the option to change the address listed on the receipt. That's a considerate touch, and quite different from my experiences on Kindle devices, where the purchase just goes ahead on whatever card you have linked to your Amazon account. It's a small detail, but one that I actually appreciate. Once you're in the actual ebook, Kobo has done a great job of making navigation a breeze. The basic swiping of the screen to go forward and backward is your main method of navigating, but if you get lost or want to jump ahead or back, simply tap the center of the screen. This will pop up the main in-document menu, and at the bottom will be a slider bar allowing you to jump to different points in the ebook. Tapping this brings up a small page preview window to essentially confirm that this is the page you want to navigate to, but if it isn't, Kobo has conveniently included the forward and backward arrows at the side to give you more fine control over exactly which page you want to jump to. And because the page is visually previewed for you, you can even use other identifiers like images or illustrations to find the page you're looking for, even if you don't know the exact page number, aiding you even further in finding your way through the ebook. Once you've used the slider bar to jump to another page, the Elipsa actually records the last two positions you were at in the book to give you the ability to instantly jump back there. If that isn't enough, Kobo has also included a quick shortcut to the ebook's table of contents just below the page slider bar. This is extremely easy to navigate and can very quickly jump you to the specific chapter you're looking for. In addition, you can easily bookmark a page of interest by tapping the top right-hand corner of the page. If you ever want to come back to these pages in future, there is a separate bookmark and annotation table of contents at the bottom right-hand corner of the device. Handwritten annotations, highlights, and notes you've made in the ebook will also show up here with different symbols beside these to help tell them apart. One other handy tool is the search option, located here at the bottom right-hand corner of the device, illustrated by the magnifying glass icon. Accessing this allows you to type in terms to search in either the current book, highlights and/or text notes you have made, although it currently seems to miss handwritten notes, Kobo's excellent on-device dictionary, the My Books folder on your device, or the online Kobo ebook store. Nicely, the Kobo Elipsa features a gyroscopic sensor that automatically flips or rotates the screen when you rotate the device. This feature is usually fairly quick and responsive. However, if you don't want this feature or just want to turn it off, tapping the center of the device's screen brings up the option to lock the screen orientation to either portrait or landscape modes. Just like on the home screen of the device, Frontlight control is also located along the top of the device menu, or one can slide their finger up and down the left side of the screen. Near this is the option to change the text font, font size, line spacing, page margin size, and text justification options. Kobo also provides a quick access button to access reading metrics, showing you how much time until you finish the book and more. But personally, I've never been big on this kind of thing, as I think reading is kind of meant to be an inherently unquantifiable experience. But for those who like it, it's there. Lastly, there's the gear icon, which lets one customize the reading experience on the device even further, including changing the areas of the screen used to turn pages, limiting what kinds of gestures can cause pages to turn, and changing how often you want the screen to refresh itself, among other options. Kobo has also finally added dark mode as an official option, although in practice I found adjusting the Frontlight so that it wasn't overly distracting more difficult when trying to read in this mode. PDF performance on the device is definitely a step up from previous Kobo devices, and page turns can be impressively quick. Navigation on PDF documents is the same as in ebooks. One still swipes the screen to flip pages forward or backward, and can access all the same navigation aids by tapping the center of the screen, like accessing the page slider bar for page jumping with the included page preview, last pages visited markers, table of contents, and the bookmarks/annotation list. Dark mode is also an option in PDF documents, although this wasn't my favorite mode to read in, as sometimes I thought the page turns tended to be a bit slower in this mode. The other problem for me was the effect of the inverted images. It made them less relatable to me, and some of them gained an almost disturbing aspect, like a ghost or X-ray image. Interestingly, this isn't an issue with dark mode on Kobo ebooks, at least the ones I tried, where images are preserved in their original formatting and are not inverted. I think Kobo could have either kept this for PDFs, that seems to be the logical choice, or it could have an enhanced mode with separate text and image dark mode options. Although one thing they did get right is that you can still write on these inverted pages in white. Regarding zoom options, there is a basic step zoom slider bar in the top menu bar which zooms in based on preset increments when using the plus and minus controls at the ends of the slider. Or you can control this at a more fine level by manually sliding your finger to any point along the bar itself. Unlike the Kobo Ebook Experience, pinch to zoom is supported on the Elipsa when reading PDF documents. Now, it isn't the smoothest pinch to zoom out there on an e-reader, but I'd say it's decent. Maybe somewhere between a 5 and 7 on a 10-point scale, with 10 being the top. This is certainly helpful with zooming in to get a better look at smaller text or details in an image. But it's not quite as helpful for improving the readability of the overall PDF. That's because the control over how far zoomed in the Elipsa gets isn't excellent, with fairly large jumps in zoom scale happening in response to small movements from one's fingers. So this means that the actual zoom control can be quite jittery, and this makes it difficult to frame the zoomed area of the page exactly how you want it. Unfortunately, the device does not let you pick a zoom level and apply it to all pages of the document. And as of this recording, the device doesn't let you turn pages while zoomed in on a document either. Not intentionally, anyway. So in terms of dedicated PDF enhancement modes, there really aren't any, which seems like a pretty big miss on a large 10.3-inch note-taking e-reader in 2021. Fortunately, the gyroscope sensor works just as well in PDF mode as when reading KoboBot ebooks. And I personally think some PDFs might be most easily read in landscape mode. Again, the top menu bar gives the user the option to let the device's sensor automatically flip the screen orientation or lock it in portrait and landscape modes. To put the Elipsa through its paces, I used my trusty 58.7 megabyte large PDF test. I'm pleased to report that I didn't encounter nearly as many issues as I did on the Kobo Forma. Although not the quickest page-turning experience I've seen on this large PDF, the Elipsa generally handled the task quite well, with only one or two small issues coming up. The first issue you can see here, with the device briefly distorting the aspect ratio of images if they were not of the same size and layout as the images on the last page it displayed. This is a bit of a weird bug, and I haven't usually seen this on other e-readers. But I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that this effect is probably due to some kind of AI on the device that tries to guess the aspect ratio of the next page in order to minimize load times on the device. But whatever the reason, this image distortion is quite brief and isn't likely to bother most users too much. The other problem was that the device sometimes jumped me to a different page number when I zoomed in to these large images and tried to navigate around them. This is probably the most annoying issue in terms of usability, but I suspect Kobo's software engineers could fix this in a coming update. On the whole, I was impressed at how well the Elipsa handled this large image-based PDF, and while its performance wasn't quite as consistently fast as something like the Onyx Booksnote Pro, it did occasionally keep pace with that device. And sometimes, it even managed to beat the speed at which the second generation Sony digital paper was able to render the same page. The Kobo Elipsa has one really standout feature that I don't think I've ever seen as well done on any other e-reader. The ability to long press on nearly any word on the page, whether a purchased Kobo ebook or a PDF, and get a fairly comprehensive definition most of the time is very impressive on this device. This is probably more easy to implement on ebooks, but I was shocked to see how often the device was able to define even obscure and small text on image-based PDFs, where sometimes the entire document is just a collection of scanned images. Now, this got me wondering if the device was performing some kind of optical character recognition, or OCR, on the documents to make this happen. So I performed a test to find out. I created both a digitally printed PDF and physically printed, then optically scanned PDF, and distressed several words on the page on both. For the digitally printed version of this document, the Elipsa had absolutely no trouble detecting and defining all of the words I tried, even those with the heaviest image distortion. However, on the physically printed and optically scanned PDF, the device couldn't define a single word on the page. This shows that the device must be relying on metadata within the document itself to detect individual words. However, this realization does little to undercut the generally excellent performance of the device in this area. Another aspect that really impressed me was that sometimes the device seemed to allow selection of more than one word to define at a time. For example, I was able to long press on one word and then drag the selection over to the word beside it in the case of this obscure two-word phrase. And even more impressively, the device still defined it correctly. Unfortunately, this multiple word selection for definition trick doesn't seem to work in PDFs, which is a shame, really. But like I said, word definition is an area where the Elipsa shines brightly. Regarding annotation, Kobo achieved mixed results. First, I'll start with the annotation experience on KoboBot ebooks. Kobo has really optimized the experience of making handwritten annotations on Kobo purchased ebooks. As far as I can see, these are, sadly, not exportable off the device. But contrary to what some other people have experienced with the device, my on-ebook annotations have stayed on the device even after I've shut it off. So while these Kobo ebook user-made annotations may have once disappeared after turning pages on the device, I think a software update has solved this issue. You are, nicely, allowed to make pressure-sensitive annotations that vary the line thickness depending on how hard you press the stylus to the screen. Adding to this, Kobo has come up with some clever workarounds to ensure that a user's handwritten annotations can effectively stay put while allowing the user to change font sizes, line spaces, and more. For example, here I circle the actor Cary Grant's name. Now watch what happens when I change the line spacing of this ebook. See how the circle I made has largely maintained its dimensions and line thickness characteristics while still being moved around the page and rescaled to fit the new line spacing options? And it doesn't end there. The device also changes the scale of your handwritten notes to match changes in font size too. When the user changes line spacing, font sizes, or makes some other change so that it gets too extreme for the device to preserve the original shape and position of your annotation, the device essentially creates a floating screenshot of the original handwritten annotation and the page settings as they were at the time it was originally created for you to view on command. This is indicated by the presence of two side brackets around the text where the handwritten annotation was originally present. Tapping on the small wavy annotation icon will pop up this screenshot for you to view. On top of all of that, the device gives you the option to either delete annotations if you no longer want them, or it allows you to revert the entire page settings, including font, margin, and line spacings, to the exact same settings which existed at the time you originally made the handwritten annotation on the page, and all with a single tap of a button. Now, to me, that's extremely impressive and shows that Kobo was really trying to think outside the box here. This is echoed by the words of Kobo's own VP of Product, Ramesh Mantha, when he was recently interviewed by the Kobo Writing Life podcast about the new Kobo Elipsa and what went into its creation and design.
The idea that being able to mark up your book will allow you to sort of get more out of what you're reading, kind of give you that experience that you're used to in print. So we knew we needed to do that really well. We knew that marking up an EPUB or a PDF had to be something that we were the best at.
Wait, what was that last part again?
We knew that marking up an EPUB or a PDF.
Yeah, what about PDFs?
Had to be something that we were the best at.
Yeah, no. Not at all, really. In fact, the initial PDF annotation experience was, how to put this, abysmal. But when you write down here, See? It's almost impossible to write on a PDF. Let's try. I barely touched it. When I go over here to write here, you see and it goes to the next page or it zooms in. You can splice this into a montage because there are so many errors happening to the highlights. And see, it's doing some flickering. I don't know what that's exactly, but see, right there, right or up, it has jumped me to another page that has not loaded completely, exposed, and it's frozen. Yeah, and it just spazzes out completely. Sucks. Yeah, underline that one. Okay, the good news is that since that footage was filmed, Kobo has issued several software updates. Although I feel they could have been a bit more descriptive about what they were aiming to fix. Various bug fixes and stability improvements. Yeah, there wasn't room for anything else in here. Thankfully, PDF annotation ability has been massively improved. By that, I mean you can at least now hope to write on a PDF document without getting jumped to another page every time you place your hand on the device. However, PDF annotation still has some pretty big issues to overcome. For one, while I'm glad you can write while zoomed in on the page, I would appreciate the notes I make not looking like blocky, low-resolution blobs of ink. Also, palm rejection issues can still be a frustrating problem, especially when zoomed in on a document. There's also the strange issue that, currently, you don't seem to be able to write on the very edge of the screen when in PDF mode. And if you try, your notes or scribbles get unceremoniously cut off. And of course, there's also the device having a tendency to just lock up sometimes and enter what I have come to call paperweight mode. I can see it all. It's entering paperweight mode a lot tonight. Most shockingly of all, despite several software updates to the Kobo Elipsa, Kobo apparently has not resolved a huge issue where the device doesn't always automatically save the handwritten annotations you make in a PDF document. Yes, that means that, in my experience, at the time of this recording, in order for your handwritten notes to actually stay on the PDF you're reading, you are forced to write your notes on the PDF, then exit it, then go back into that same PDF before you shut the device off. Even when you do this, the quality of annotations of the exported PDFs isn't excellent. The lines often appeared quite bumpy, especially when zooming in, more like a series of overlapping dots, really. On a Windows computer, these dot cluster-like lines can be moved around and one can change their scale. Oddly, I observed that when I moved these annotations around at all, after clicking on them, these annotations were converted to more smooth lines. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. The one thing I am sure about is that Kobo should work to improve these annotation exports to look better once exported off the device. So while I appreciate the bold move Kobo made by including the ability to annotate PDFs at all, the fact remains that if consistent and predictably good PDF annotation is something crucial to you in an e-reader, the Sony digital paper, Onyx Books devices, the Fujitsu Quaderno series, or even the Remarkable 2 currently offer much more polished experiences in this regard. The Elipsa also boldly attempts to add notebook functionality for the first time on a Kobo device. It splits this into two types, basic and advanced notebooks. You do need to make this choice before you begin writing, and I think it's a bit unfortunate that Kobo doesn't let you convert from one type to another after you begin writing. For the basic notebook, the experience is fairly straightforward with no gesture controls to learn. Upon creating a new basic notebook and starting it up for the first time, you'll be presented with a grid template. Why? Who knows? But if you want to change that, you'll have to tap the arrow at the top right-hand corner to bring up the menu. Then, you can change your page template to one of the fairly limited options on offer. The other main options include the ability to change between 5 different stylus/brush types, object and brush eraser options, 5 default line thicknesses, 5 line shades from black to light gray, as well as handy undo and redo controls in case you make a mistake. Besides changing the page template background, the other options in the submenu are options to clear, delete, and refresh the page, as well as the ability to export these notes off the device. I'll get into that more in a minute. I'll just say it, I'm not the biggest fan of writing on this device. For those wondering, it's not like writing on the Remarkable 2 or any Onyx device I've ever used, or even the Sony Digital Paper. While there is a slight texture to the screen, in my opinion, the only advantage this provides is making the surface a bit less slippery to write on than glass. But I don't get a paper-like vibe from this. It's more like slate or some kind of stone. Part of the problem is that the Elipsa itself is a very sturdy, very well-built device, so its screen feels very hard to the touch. When you factor in a stylus nib with little give or flex to it, the combination, to me anyway, makes writing feel labor-intensive and exhausts my wrists quickly. Simply put, I just don't find it comfortable. It might be a bit more comfortable to write on when using the case as a small stand to angle the device upwards slightly, but not much in my experience. While usually working decently, the device's detection of the stylus input and the lag time between actual lines appearing on the screen can sometimes be slow. And this had a tendency to throw off my writing, as it completely takes me out of any impression that I'm writing on paper. An additional and unfortunately constant problem is that the device often didn't seem quick enough to accurately record some of my stylus movements on the page. The device really struggled with my handwriting, especially when I created lines very quickly. I've slowed down the footage so you can clearly see the amount of stylus movement I make when writing the words better and many. One can clearly see that many of these movements are not being registered by the device. Making matters worse, palm rejection on the device can be pretty bad at times, making one of Kobo VP of Product Ramesh Mantha's fears a sad and frustrating reality.
A lot of really tricky technical details so that it works well. Things like when you're writing on the screen, your palm is invariably going to rest on the screen as well. You don't want it to cause unintentional page turns, for example.
If you'd like to export your notes, the device first gives you the choice to export either just the current page or the whole notebook. It then lets you choose between exporting the file either onto the device itself, which can then be accessed by connecting the Elipsa to a computer, or to exporting the file to a Dropbox account if you have one set up with the device. It then gives you the option of exporting the file as a PDF or zipped PNG or JPEG file. I'm happy to report that the export results of the basic notebook were fairly easy to find and generally turned out quite well. None of these exports allow one to reposition or resize your handwritten notes, but given that these are notebook exports, that probably isn't too much of an inconvenience for most users. The PDF exports fare best, and lines look quite smooth even at 400% zoom. The JPEG, probably unsurprisingly, isn't as detailed, and image artifacts start to show up at about 200% zoom. And the PNG also shows some jagged edges at about the same magnification. But neither of these are bad and look quite good in my opinion. The options in the Advanced Notebook are similar to the Basic Notebook, but with a few key differences. Instead of 5 brush types, you only get 4 in this mode. Also, whereas you cannot rotate the screen from portrait to landscape modes in basic notebooks, you can in the advanced version, and you can also lock the screen into either orientation. Under the More tab, you'll see a variety of new options that I'll come to in a minute. Writing in the advanced notebook is definitely a unique experience in the e-ink world. And as you're about to see, I think right now anyway, that's a good thing. Firstly, this mode incorporates pen/stylus gesture controls, such as drawing a straight line downwards quickly between words to split them, drawing a straight line upwards at the end of a word to join words together, underlining words to make them appear in bold font, crossing out words and sentences by drawing a line or scribbling through them, and double tapping your handwritten or printed words to convert them to text. Now, quite impressively, the conversion of handwritten or printed words to text is done entirely on the device, with no need to be connected to the internet. As to the quality of that printing/handwriting to text conversion, well, it's hit and miss. Largely miss, I'd say. I am improved with their device's hand-milling he-led conversation. Okay. Any impression I had, the thing I was impressed about, is now gone. But let's test its conversion. This is a bed of the Advanced Notebook. Well, no, it's not. There is an anther bed of B Advanced Ushabosh. Sure, Kobo. Sure. And don't you let anyone tell you different. And convert this. This should be fun. This is a bed of C Advanced Rebook PAL Bluetooth update. Probably about every third word, so that's not correct. Despite the current state of the handwritten notes to text conversion feature, Kobo does deserve points for trying, and crucially for trying something new. That innovative streak continues with the device allowing one to resize converted text to some extent and to move these sentences around on the page to reorder them. In a move I haven't really seen any other e-reader company take, Kobo also lets you insert boxes on the page that allow you to do different specific tasks. Let's start with the Insert Math Equation option. Don't worry, it'll be brief. This mode, like the name implies, lets one write math equations freehand and then lets you double tap these to convert them to actual numbers and symbols. And while it's at it, the device will try to solve these for you if it can. Again, the offline conversion of one's written numbers and symbols is impressive in concept, and sometimes the device does a great job. But as before, there are issues. One big issue is that the device doesn't seem to judge distances between equations too well. If you write one equation on one side and then write an equation on the other, I've found the device often has trouble telling the two apart and will just connect them into one big equation, which can be frustrating. The other standout function, in my opinion, is the Insert Diagram option. But here the device allows you to draw diagrams freehand and then convert these into more precise shapes, arrows, and text by double tapping on them. And for the most part, I think it does a really good job. Sometimes I really tested the device in this mode, not expecting to be able to keep up. But more often than not, I was impressed with how well it did. Okay, let's see some more wild shapes. Let's see what it does with this. Actually, that's pretty good. That's a real curveball, Kobo, and you really handled that well. But it's not perfect. The other two modes, Insert Drawing and Insert Freeform Section, are very similar. So similar, I can't really tell their specific functions apart. Essentially, both allow you to draw freehand on the device. The only difference I've really experienced between the two being that the Freeform Section mode adds a gridline background. Probably to aid artists with things like perspective. The method of exporting the advanced notebook is done through the same menu prompts as with the basic notebook. But unfortunately, that's where the similarities end. In the advanced notebook, you're only given the options to export the notebook files as either a Word file, text file, or HTML file. If you're like me, your jaw might just be hanging a bit open here, as there is no PDF export option. Why? On the notebook with the most image-centric options, like dedicated drawing and diagram modes, would you not keep the format that would be most likely to preserve those things when exported? I mean, text file export options for diagrams but no PDF? What on earth were they thinking? Were they even thinking here? The results of the exports are also very hit and miss. The HTML export fared the best of the three in terms of fidelity to the actual notebook I made. The good news was that here, all lines I made exported correctly from what I could see, and my handwritten segments were preserved. The equations did get kind of run together and weren't so easily legible. But aside from the fact that this was all being exported as an HTML file, I can't complain too much about how it turned out. That all changed pretty quickly, however, when I looked at the Word document export results. I'll start off with what it did well. For example, my oh-so-well-drawn waterfall looked pretty good, and I was even able to change its dimensions. The equations were also grouped neatly together in a little box on the page, and the diagram, although perhaps rendered in less bold lines than the original, looked very accurate, and I even had the option to move elements of it around. So what's not to like here? Well, just look at what the device did to my freehand drawing. Okay, the image wasn't exactly the pinnacle of artistic realism when I drew it, but I'd argue it had significant character. This exported rendition of it is just terrible. The whole back of the car has been lopped off, one of the hubcaps has been converted into a letter J for some reason, along with all the windows on the buildings being converted into text. The Elipsa also felt the need to add in extra lines for reasons that are best known to it alone. The other thing I wasn't crazy about was that my one unconverted bit of handwriting from this page was converted to text by the device when it exported it out. And incorrectly so at that. Oh wait, there's still text export. Surely that will redeem... Oh. Yeah. I think a word or two about the Frontlight on this device is called for. It's not exactly bad. but I don't think it was a primary focus of Kobo's, and I don't think it's among the best I've used. There are good points in its favor. It's evenly lit with no real standout dark areas that I've noticed. You can fairly easily control the Frontlight's intensity via the slider bar, or via swiping your thumb up and down the left-hand side of the screen, which also, luckily, applies to the notebook modes, where, bizarrely, the Frontlight slider bar option is entirely absent. Another what were they thinking moment there, I'd say. I also tried to see if the Elipsa's Frontlight was using the controversial PWM for its LED lighting, like on the Kobo Forma e-reader, but nicely, I didn't see much evidence of this. So if it is there, I think it's fairly subtle. My biggest problem with the Elipsa's Frontlight is that it doesn't have a color temperature adjustment function, something the Kobo Forma did have. That would be the third what were they thinking moment in this review for those keeping track. It's just a lot more easy on the eyes to be able to custom tint the Frontlight on your device, at least for me. This is especially true when the Frontlight is as bright as the Elipsa's, and frankly on most settings I found the Elipsa Frontlight to be just too bright to read on in a truly dark room. Even when I use dark mode, the brightness the Frontlight added to the black sections of the screen was something I found really distracting. Lastly, Bluetooth audio support. The Elipsa didn't have it when it first shipped out, but Kobo has unlocked this feature via a recent software update. To get set up, you first will need to tap on the More menu, then Settings, and then Bluetooth connection. And there you'll be able to turn on Bluetooth on the device and pair it with your Bluetooth speaker or other compatible device. Then, once this is set up, you can go to the newly unlocked Audiobooks tab in the Kobo bookstore on the device and select an audiobook to listen to. And at the time this recording was made, there are several free trial versions available, so you can test it out. Once you download your audiobook, Kobo has done a good job of creating an easy-to-use set of controls with a fairly intuitive layout. This includes play and pause button, 30-second skip forward or backwards buttons, and an audio slider/progress bar to get to certain time indices in the audiobook quickly. You also get access to a table of contents to quickly jump to different chapters in the audiobook, and the option to speed up or slow down the pace of the voice reading the book by certain intervals. There is also a list of audiobook metrics, which, to my mind, feels a little more superfluous than ever in an audiobook mode. I was impressed that Kobo also included visual volume controls on the device, which can be really helpful if your device doesn't have some kind of indicator screen, like the Bluetooth speaker I was using here. Playing audiobooks worked really seamlessly, and the on-device controls seemed to work instantly. Here's a short example of what this was like.
This is a special extended preview of a Kobo original audiobook.
Kobo Originals presents Pride and Prejudice, written by Jane Austen and read by Jan Kramer.
She told me all about it.
Mr. Bennet made no answer.
Do you not want to know who has taken it?
Cried his wife impatiently. You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. This was invitation enough.
Why, my dear, you must know.
however little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighborhood. Kobo Originals presents.
We hope you've enjoyed this extended preview. To hear the rest of the story, search for this book in the Kobo store here on your e-reader, or head to kobo.com/audiobooks to find this and hundreds of thousands of other audio titles. Thanks for listening. Your e-reader, or head to kobo.com/audiobooks to find this, and we hope you've enjoyed this extended preview.
The Kobo Elipsa isn't just the newest offering from Kobo. To me, it represents an important moment in the evolution of e-readers as a whole. When you think about it, this is the first time one of the large players in the dedicated ebook industry has stepped quite so far out of their comfort zone. That leap of faith has produced some welcome innovations and excellent outcomes, along with decidedly mixed attempts, and also a few areas that are just plain mediocre and need urgent improving. As a dedicated e-reader, there is very little improvement I can recommend for the Elipsa. This was clearly the primary focus for the engineers at Kobo, and it shows. It does it very well. The PDF and notebook areas of the device are much more mixed, and some decisions stand out to me as being downright terrible. If Kobo wants to be really considered a serious player in the world of annotation and note-taking capable e-readers, these problems can't just be ignored. Kobo has to go back to the drawing board on these and deliver on the promise of this device. Creativity is laudable and appreciated, but reliability and actual real-world usability are the key areas they have to tackle now. And, they might just pull it off. As, in the words of Kobo's own VP of Product, Ramesh Mantha,
and it's one, we're not done. This, when I say Elipsa is the first step, it is, we will be continually iterating on this experience. For us, it's the beginning of a journey rather than sort of a culmination.
So, Kobo, if you're listening, 1. Fix the nib. It is simply too hard to write comfortably on Elipsa's very hard glass surface. It made my wrist feel very tired, very quickly. Consider introducing a Kobo Stylus Pro, featuring springs or a new nib material to give the feeling of writing on the screen some give. 2. Massively improve your stylus input sensitivity. It can currently miss, reduce, or merge whole quickly made pen strokes on the device. 3. Improve utilization of onboard processing power to decrease device freezing. This currently happens way too often to actually make long-term note-taking feasible, in my experience with the device anyway. 4. Continue to improve palm rejection software on the device. This has been improved, but further work could be done to stop the device flipping pages while annotating PDFs or note-taking. Consider adding software which locks the page turn function when the device senses the stylus close to the screen. It really could help. 5. Add more stylus types, brushes, and shades to the PDF annotation experience. Why is there only one option? 6. Refine handwritten annotations which are made when zoomed in. This currently looks very blocky, and this makes it difficult to make really fine annotations on the device. 7. Add special zoom and page navigation/manual cropping modes for PDF documents, along with contrast adjustment. Come on, Kobo, you activated the Elipsa's whole audiobook function with one software update. You can do this. And it would definitely be appreciated. 8. Add a mass erase or area erase feature, as moving the stylus over every single dot you want to erase gets old really fast. 9. Fix the annotations disappearing on the PDF bug. You can add a save button or implement whatever little software trick you need to do, but this should have been completely fixed before the product was even launched. I'm honestly truly shocked. I need to bring this to your attention. So there you have it. Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, how about giving it a digital like by pressing that thumbs up button and subscribing for more Inktelligent videos like this.